Jalisco is one of the 31 sovereign Mexican states. Well known for its mariachi music and tequila distilleries, this was the home of Orlando Delgado's family for many years. In the 1980s, the population in Jalisco was climbing well over 4.3 million. This decade was marked by the Latin American debt crisis, which caused unemployment rates to skyrocket and destroy the savings of many middle-class Mexican families. The Immigration Reform and Control Act of 1986 attracted many Mexican families to come to the United States. Because of the IRCA legalization programs, Mexican immigrants accounted for about 1/5 of the legal immigrant population in the states at that time. Orlando's parents brought his two older sisters to the United States around this time. He was actually born in California after they arrived. In most cases, leaving the native country is the first step in the progression of heritage language loss. However, Orlando has fought that system, and now with the help of his wife Lindsay, continues to preserve his heritage through their son Rocco.
He's definitely what we call a balanced bilingual. He knows, he's kept his heritage language. He speaks Spanish with his parents and all of his family, but then he also is fluent in English, and you can tell that he has a higher level of English than the normal Chicano would.
According to the Center for Applied Linguistics, language loss is the result of an oppressive system in the United States. Although we do not have an official national language, we as a society tend to promote assimilation while economic and social forces make English a valuable commodity. As a result, in families where older generations have limited knowledge of the English language, communication gaps begin to surface and create a sense of cultural loss for some individuals. By staying connected to his heritage and continuing the use of his family's native language, Orlando has been able to overcome the obstacles of this oppressive system.
Some of his family, they do speak a little bit of English, some more than others, but basically it's all Spanish there, and in their household it's all Spanish.
Even Orlando's sister Guille has to admit that her family represents a rare case. Guille would be considered a 1.5 generation Mexican immigrant, but she is also a balanced bilingual who can code switch back and forth from Spanish to English with ease. Were your parents' jobs linguistically demanding at all? Where they had to learn English quickly, or were they able to get by without it?
My mom's gotten by without.
Yeah.
I mean, she understands, and she won't speak English in front of us, she doesn't like to, but she understands a lot, and she obviously has communication with people. She always has
every story ever.
We tease her, so maybe that's why she doesn't like to speak.
So in order for Orlando to stay connected to his family while still integrating into American society, he had no choice but to balance his language use. Later on, when Lindsay and Orlando met and got married, they both realized the importance of this balance for their future family. After studying the basic progression of generational language loss in immigrant families, there are a few things we might expect. The first would be that because Orlando is a second-generation immigrant, he would experience some language and culture loss that could lead to dissonance between him and his parents. As we have already seen, that is not the case. The other general assumption is that with Rocco representing the third generation, he would have even more language and culture loss. Rocco is only 2 years old, so it might be too early to tell. However, Lindsay and Orlando are taking the proper precautions to ensure that this loss does not occur.
When we had our child, we thought it would definitely be beneficial for him to be bilingual. And he kind of has to have it at the same time. It has to be a simultaneous thing. Because on the one half of the family, he's going to be speaking Spanish, and in my half of the family, he'll be speaking English. So he has to have it at the same time.
Lindsay is a teacher at Bent Elementary School in a 4th grade bilingual classroom. Because of her educational background in the Spanish language, she is able to communicate with Orlando's family as well as help teach Rocco Spanish as he continues through the language acquisition process. The Handbook of Child Language claims that simultaneous bilingualism occurs in children who are exposed to 2 spoken languages from before the age of 2, and continue to be addressed in both languages until the final stages of language development.
So he hears more English, and he watches his cartoons in English and stuff, but he does, when he watches movies, they're all in Spanish, or he'll watch, like if my husband's watching a soccer game, it'll be in Spanish. Mm-hmm. But he's picking up a lot of Spanish commands, because when my husband speaks to him, or like tells him to do something, he tells him in Spanish. So he definitely has those Spanish commands, and I think that was the first thing he understood, were those commands in Spanish. Basic things like lay down, come here, eat that, I don't know, little things that the kids pick up. Lately, he's right at 2 years old, and he's at that stage where he's mimicking everything, and he's picking up more oral Spanish. So it's really funny, because my husband, it was just last weekend, he was like, vámonos, like, let's go, and my kid was like, vámonos, and it was like, it's so funny to hear him try to like, say those words, but that's something that we really like try to promote with him. It's like the both languages. And it's coming, I guess it's kind of like a natural thing. It's just how you like learn the language. You just kind of pick it up by hearing it and using it in those situations.
The importance of Rocco's bilingualism does not stem only from his father's Mexican heritage. His mother identifies as a Spanish speaker as well, despite the fact that she does not come from a Hispanic background.
Because my job relies so much on Spanish, and I have to know so much Spanish. So I wouldn't want to like lock him out of that part of me, because that's like a big part of me, and that's why I want him to be able to know that part of me as well. Like, I am also a Spanish speaker.
Raising a child to become a balanced bilingual is a task that needs to extend to a school setting as well. Lindsay and Orlando recognize the importance of supplementing foundational knowledge of the language from home with academic Spanish.
I think he needs to read in Spanish. I want him to be a proficient writer in Spanish and know the grammar and everything that goes along with it.
Yeah. Along with language fluency, it is important for Rocco to learn more about his cultural heritage and to preserve the traditions of his family. Rocco is fortunate enough to have a large family on both his mother's side as well as his father's. Lindsay comes from an Italian background, and she claims that her family's heritage mixes well with Orlando's to create an authentic cultural atmosphere within the family.
Well, our families are very similar. My family really identified with their Italian roots, and so the Italian and Mexican culture is very similar, which they're very like Catholic families. Right. They like to celebrate, they like to party, they like to be all together. There's no like one dinner where there's just like 5 people. Like it's like a big group of people, your aunts and uncles and like millions of cousins everywhere. With his family, we go to a lot more of the big parties. They put on like larger parties, baptisms, quinceañeras. That's pretty much the bigger ones, because in my family do big weddings and stuff like that too. My grandmother's parents came from Italy. Well, her dad came first to work in Pekin in the coal mines. And he came, it was in the early 1900s, and then he went back to get my great-grandmother and bring her over here. And both of them only spoke Italian. But at the time, it was really looked down upon to be the minority in the United States, and they were kind of like the lowest like minority at that time. So when they started having children, they had one in Italy, so he obviously knew a little bit of Italian. But then when they came over here, they didn't teach any of their 8 kids Italian. They said, no, you're in America, you have to speak English.
Maintaining bilingualism is a constant uphill battle, especially in a country where one language is held as superior over all others. If Rocco does not recognize this oppressive hierarchy as he gets older and actively fight against it, he may begin to succumb to the expectations of American society. He must constantly work to maintain proficiency in both languages, otherwise it is likely that he will lose his Spanish language ability as well as his cultural identity over time.